Capone, and she will talk about basically what we can do in emergency situations. Is it okay? You look confused.
Yes, because I don't want to recognize this version of the talk.
Right? Zoom in.
Okay, so thank you all for the presentation. I think somehow follow up to the previous presentation. So, as we were talking today, the issue of migrants actually can be addressed in different ways. One way is to address it when people arrive, and the other way is to address it in the countries where people are coming from. The problem is that the problem of addressing to my opinion, to addressing only one of the two parts without addressing the other one, is that, as we said, if we do not find a way to protect people in their own countries, then people will keep being forced to leave their own country. Nobody wants to leave his country. Nobody wants to delete his past. Nobody wants to destroy his own identity. This is something that no one wants to do. And people that are coming to Europe nowadays, they are forced to do it because they are living in a condition in which they cannot live. Simply they cannot live. So we opened, let's say, well, now almost 6 years ago, we opened an NGO. We are a group of physicists, engineers, and we started working in Palestine because, well, we started working in Palestine. And we decided that it was to us a social duty to transfer who we are into something that has an effect on society. I think that somehow we all want a lottery, being born in one part of the world in which we are free to think, free to develop our life, free to move around the world without any boundaries. But if there are no boundaries for me, I do not conceive that there are boundaries for other people. And there are many countries around the world, like Palestine, for example. There is a country where not only there are boundaries from the country to outside, but there are even boundaries within the country. And to all of us, it became important to find a way to transfer the know-how that we were lucky enough to be able to accumulate into programs that are programs in which we can transfer who we are and work together with other populations to develop a network that will break boundaries. So this is what we started doing. So we started working in sustainable development. So a few mentioned the United Nations and the European Union wrote in 2015, they signed in 2015 a document that is the Prosecution of the Millennium Goal document. This document is a document that deals with sustainable development, and they set up 17 goals. Actually, the way in which this document has been written, according to me, is quite dangerous. So they set up what is sustainable development, and they said, okay, these are a few points. So you say that, for example, it is important, if you read it, it's important, for example, to have an effort towards building an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient future. And then you need to go in the direction of economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. And if you read all these points, you can see that, for example, as scientists, as academics, we could touch all of those points with what we do. This is all that we do, and to my opinion, it is really our duty as citizens, as member of the cultural part. I mean, we all work with culture. It is essential to us to transfer what we do. And actually, there even is. These are the sustainable development goals that the European Union, that the United Nations set up. And actually, if you look at them and you read the card and the way in which the card is written, it actually is quite dangerous because they do separate these goals into different targets. For example, they separate energy from clean water and sanitation and energy from education, for example. And if you look now at the way in which fundings are invested, they're invested in such a way that actually they're going in the direction of a new colonialism. Because if you sponsor, for example, in Africa now we're seeing something that is surreal. NGOs are gathering a huge amount of money to go in rural areas in Africa to implement photovoltaic systems. Now, if you go in a Maasai village that does not even know what is the meaning of what can you do with electricity, what is the point of going there and bringing a photovoltaic panel? Nothing. If you do not go there and work together with the local population, understanding what are the traditions, what are the materials that are used, and what is the real need. You cannot decide as an outsider what is the need that has to be felt by another population. If you go and you do something like this, not only you create colonialism, but you create dependency. You destroy the local culture, you impose yourself. This is all that is going against a sustainable development. So actually when you read this card, when I started reading what was written in this card, I found it quite, on one side there are some parts of this card that even make you smile. There is written that by 2020 there will be no violence any longer for women. So just be happy about it. By 2030 there will be no analphabetization around the world. This is written there, huh? It's written. And if you read it, it's true. If it's written, it's true. Actually, it starts with a group of experts gathered for 2 years and came out with this card, and then you read it and you think, okay. So, but if you read, so if you go back and you want to actually read, I read it as a scientist, I can see that many of those points are points that, as an academic, we can touch. As academics, we can touch, and we can work on. So, for example, I'm as Dilar. We were working together in chemistry in Cambridge. I'm a material scientist at the end of the day. And in my field can work, for example, in the direction of clean water sanitation or affordable energy. We can work on education. There are many things that we can do together. We can do. And this is also another interesting thing, that the United Nations actually came out with a document that states that it's important that scientists are involved into sustainable development. They even state it. So they say it is crucial, the role of science in this kind of direction. So what can we do as scientists? Well, if we want to go in the direction of sustainable development, you need to follow many different directions, but these directions have to be followed together. So if I go somewhere and I work with a local community, I want to implement an action. If I implement an action that is not reproducible, I am colonizing a place. So if I implement an action, I absolutely need to create a know-how transfer. But the know-how transfer has to be twofold, because I have to learn from the community I'm working with, because I have to learn what are the traditions, I have to learn what are the materials, I have to learn what are the needs. And after I understand, if I'm able to understand what really are the needs of a community, then I can work with what are my skills, with what I know, with what is my network, and I can involve my network into creating a program that then will support and work together with the local community and develop something that is tailored on the local community and its needs. And I can work together with them. In this way, I'm doing research. And I'm doing research that has local involvement. And if I touch all of those points, then I can implement something that is stable, is reproducible, and it becomes eradicated. It becomes something that the local community knows, that is felt as useful, and then it becomes something, a step that then you can move forward from. Let's make an example. The Maasai community on which photovoltaic panels are installed. It's not a joke, it's really happening. Or there is another NGO that is doing something that, again, to me is absurd. They're going, again, it's in Kenya, and they are installing not only photovoltaic systems, but they created Catholic schools, and they put electric pumps that distribute the water. And then what they say is that they distribute the water for a cheap price. While close by, there is a very polluted river. So what is the local community doing? The local community goes to the river, sends the women of the villages to the river to get the water where the animals are drinking, because that water is free, and if the animals are drinking, the water is safe. Instead of taking the water that is coming from the pumps that the NGO is distributing for a very cheap price. Why? Because something that was not felt has been installed. It has not been installed together with the local population. There's not been a sensitization. There's been no program that worked together with the local community to show that polluted water has effects, and then you can have another kind of water, and then you even make people pay for something that you want them to use. And then, if you want to scholarize people, you scholarize it with a Catholic standard. So these are the kind of programs that are happening all over the world, and these are the kind of programs that are, according to me, not going in the direction of sustainable development. And this is what we're seeing as an investment, as an implementation in many of the countries where people are willing to intervene and intervening. And then if this is what you do in a country, and then you create actually a fracture between an intervention and the local culture, how can you think that you can create a stability in that country? And this is happening maybe in regions that are just underdeveloped. and not war regions. In war regions it's even worse. We have been working as an NGO. We tried to work with Kurdistan, we tried to work with Kobani. We are in the Reconstruct Kobani board, and I want to actually follow up what she was saying. If you do not have the support of the institutions, you do not work. Because if you have programs, if you have projects, and you cannot bring material in, as we have the problem that we have in Gaza, the problem that we have with Kobani, you cannot work. And it's not a problem of gathering money or gathering good intention or gathering groups. You also need to have the institutional support, because otherwise you're just you by yourself doing things, and you do not manage to do them. So we started as an NGO. Okay, this is our story. We started. This is you group as a people. And then you do something. We started with the first project. The first project was a project in which we tried to see if we could implement something. So we started working in Gaza. Gaza is a place where actually I did not manage to enter because I ended up 3 times in Eretz with a meat on my face. Having the permits. So we started working in Gaza, and we work on a hospital. Gaza is a part of the world that does not have electricity, does not have water. Electricity is only distributed 3-4 hours a day, and the electric generators have been destroyed, the central ones, and all the electricity that is coming from the neighboring countries. So practically the neighboring countries have the possibility of cutting energy completely and leaving Gaza without any kind of support. Even because the only energy that you can produce inside nowadays is mainly produced with gas-based generators. This means that if you go on a hospital, for example, so this is the situation in Gaza. Since 2006 there are energy shortages, so you have 4-6 hours a day, so all public services are not working. Hospitals are working 4 to 6 hours a day, if they're working, with unreliable services. Doctors operate often with the light of their mobile phones, because they end up with the electricity that just goes away in the middle of the operation often. People die because the machines to breathe just lose the power, and they just die during operation for this reason. And then many neighborhoods they are so poor that people cannot afford even to have gas-based generators. Kids study in the light of candles, and there have been many neighborhoods in which there have been kids that died because they were studying at the light of candles, and then the houses burned. This is the situation in which we were working. And so we decided to try to do something this was an implementation project, but we decided to try to do something that was, to us, to break a border. So if you cannot bring electricity somewhere, you produce electricity somewhere. It's easy. In this way you create an island of independence. Our aim was not just to create a specific island of independence, but to create a case. So what we did is we went in one of the poorest neighbors, and here we're comparing Gaza to Munich for a simple reason. There was a study done in Germany. That was a study in which they simulated if it would be possible to run an entire city just by means of renewable energies. And they found out that actually you can even run Munich almost only with photovoltaic. And if you can do it with Munich, this is the average insolation that you have per year. Look at the difference between the one that you have in Munich and the one that you have in Gaza. You can imagine that, for example, just using photovoltaic could be a viable source of energy for a place like Gaza that has sun 360 days per year. So what we had to face as challenges was the fact that Gaza does not have an accumulation point, not a single accumulation point. That means that if you produce energy during the day, you do not have a place where to store it, and then you cannot distribute it from that place during the night. There is a serious problem. So you have to create off-grid system. It means that if you want to create an island of independence, it really has to be an island of independence. It means that if you want to make a building independent, you have to create the whole system, batteries and the system and everything has to be created there. And and the system has to be very big. So we started working on a hospital. This hospital is called the Jenin Charitable Hospital. It was a hospital that was built in 2010-2011, and this is another interesting story of the NGOs. It was built and supported by many NGOs. They bought new machineries that they distributed, and they did not think about the fact that if you do not have electricity, the machineries cannot work. So you had the contribution of many NGOs that bought one piece, the other piece, X-rays, ultrasounds, but then the hospital was not working practically. It's a hospital that is in the Shujaya district, and it serves a population of 200,000 people. And it is the one that offers medicines at the lower prices in all the neighborhood, and it offers services at the lower prices, and it's one of the few clinics that is offering free psychological support to kids in Gaza. And this is a very, very important issue, because in a place where kids that are from 10 years old, no, even 15 years old, below 15 years old, grew up with 3 wars. And they grew up with 3 wars in an open-air jail. So to have psychological support is something that's quite important. So what we started doing is that, this is the consumption of the plant. Okay, we don't need it. So what we decided to do it was, and then again, I just make a comment to link to the story of the NGOs. We decided together with a friend, an engineer that lives in Gaza, and is now the project manager of the project, and we opened the NGO with 3 branches, and he's the head of the Palestinian branch. Prior to opening the NGO, what we did was we designed the plant. We designed it, a modular plant, we made the choice of the material with absurd criteria like ultrasonic planes will not break it. It's made in such a way with inverters that are taking care if one of the panels breaks down, then you reconvert and you rebalance the system, because with photovoltaic system you have to be careful about these things. I mean, we designed all the plant in such a way that it could be installed one step after the other. Then we went to UNDP. We went to UNDP and we said, we do not even want our name. This is a design for a hospital that you contributed to build. And the hospital that you contributed to build is not working because there is no electricity. We give you the design of a plant that will work. They said, that's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. Come back tomorrow. And then ITAM was receiving day by day phone calls that were shifting this meeting, and this went on for 6 months. He was asked to bring the documents. He brought the documents. He was asked to bring the prices, the offers. He brought everything. It was never received. Then we went to another one of the NGOs that contributed to build the hospital. It's called Welfare Association. We went there. They bought half of the machinery of the hospital, and they had projects that were supporting photovoltaic systems. And again, we said, we do not care about our names. Take this system. It could be a viable alternative. That's very interesting. Other 2 months, then we decided to open an NGO. So we decided to open an NGO. We opened it in the UK. We started with fundraising, dinners. And we're not as good as you. You have to teach us how you do to make 50,000 euros with one dinner, because we started with dinners with 300 euros. And then we grew, and then until we became a charity, and then we could apply for grants. And then we applied for grants, and then we installed the system. So this is what happened. We installed the first part, since it's a modular system, we installed it in steps. And already with the first step that we had, we could install half of the plant. Actually, yes, only one floor of the hospital could work, and we had already 186% of the number of patients increasing the number of patients in, for example, gynecology. That is very important in a very poor area to have a gynecology department that is working, because people were giving birth at home. And then in January 2015 we could complete the first modules. And now, since then, the hospital that was active only 4 hours a day, now is active every day. It's open every day, 17 hours a day, completely off grid, completely independent on any energy provision from the outside. And this is the growth that you can see of the various departments, starting from before we started working up to the end. So this is the growth in the number of patients that were treated in the different departments. And this is with a plant that costed less than one of the machineries that has been built both by the NGOs and put in the hospital. So the plant costed around $50,000, and this is the improvement that you have with a plant of $50,000. An ultrasound costs more. The ultrasound that they had costs more. And this again, it's civil society organization, you can self-organize yourself, but it's bad politics. This is bad politics. And this is the hospital now. This is the hospital now, it's working, and it's working like this since actually 2014, because we started installing the first part, and in the summer attacks in 2014, because Gaza was heavily bombed during all of the summer 2014, this was one of the 3 hospitals in all of Gaza that was open. There were only 3 hospitals. And this was the only hospital that is completely photovoltaic, so it was open 17 hours a day, even during the attacks, and it hosted all of the patients of the region. It hosted the patients of a region that has been destroyed, because the Shujaya neighborhood has been completely destroyed during those attacks. So, local involvement. Well, if you want, so we showed that we could implement something. Then we decided, okay, this was an implementation project, it was needed, it has an effect. And actually, it even went with local involvement because we worked together with local engineers, we involved local engineers. We actually, all the workers are local, we bought the material locally, but this is not the kind of local involvement that we want. So we started working with other NGOs, with other groups. And if you want to work, for example, if you want to create systems that are able to illuminate in regions where there is no electricity, well, there is a very interesting NGO, it's called Leader of Light. It's an Italian, you know them, yeah, it's an Italian, they could be very interesting for you. I will put you in contact. They're an Italian, they're a Filipino NGO. They were born in the Philippines. And what they did is during I think it was a tsunami in the Philippines in 2010, 12, I don't know. What they did is they designed systems, they designed very simple circuit in which you can create photovoltaic lamps with scrap material. So you only need to buy a small photovoltaic panel that costs a few dollars, $10 more or less. And then you can build a lamp in a bottle, in a plastic bottle, like Coca-Cola bottle. And these are the kind of systems that you make. And what they do, that is very interesting, is they train locally trainers that then know how to create these lamps, and they will train, again, people locally to create the lamps. So they start, they invest, they produce lamps, let's say for a village, but then they create a group of trainers in the village, and then the group of trainers is able to spread, and this will spread. And they have open sources designs that you can find online, and they tell you even what is the cheapest material that you can use, and they give you the specification, and they do everything like that. So we started working, and this is an example. We started working together with them, and we started designing programs together with them, for example, to work in refugee areas. But then this was not enough for us. I mean, I'm a researcher, we're all researchers, and as I said, I think it is our duty as researchers, as academics, to do something. So what we can do is we can design research programs that can go in the sustainable development direction. How? You can involve academia, you can create networks. You can create networks with academia, with local partners, with industry, and you can work, and with NGOs, and you can work locally. So one of the biggest problems that there is, again, in Gaza is the problem of water sanitation. So what we did is, I will not go in details here, but okay, the water issue in Gaza is very serious for many reasons. One is that the underground sources have been drained from the inside, because colonies are being built along the water sources, so water is pumped outside of the strip, so it's becoming saline. All the underground water is becoming saline. Secondly, all the sewers treatment plants have been destroyed and bombed, so sewers are going unfiltered in the sea. Third, there was a big chemical factory that has been destroyed, and all of the chemical products went in the sea. And then you can imagine what is the situation. The water in Gaza is absurdly polluted from bacteria, biological, chemical waste, then the bombings when the white phosphorus, they have been bombing with any kind of possible chemical. So the situation, the pollution situation is absurd. Moreover, is completely different from one place to the other. So actually you can enjoy choosing what you want to filter, just shifting along the coast. And then here again, bad politics. What was done? So imagine that not only the water is polluted, but the water distribution has been destroyed. All of the piping all over Gaza has been completely destroyed. What is the solution that has been proposed by the United Nations? Just another bit of overview of the situation. The fishermen in Gaza cannot go over 2 miles from the coast, because if they go just over 2 miles from the coast, the Israeli army is just sending them back to the coast. The solution has been proposed by the United Nations, and again, why do we have to push on the institutional side? Has been to build a 1.5 kilometer desalination plant that will cover 1.5 kilometer of the coast, that will throw back for 1 kilometer hydrosaline water, brine, in the sea, destroying all the flora and the fauna. That would be fed by a gas-based energy generator, and in the agreements there is written that the gas will come from Israel and Egypt. And the cost of all of this would be $500 billion. So this is what the United Nations is proposing, without pushing to remove a siege, without pushing for any kind of other possible solution. So they're actually proposing to create the dependence, because they're putting the single water production in one place, fed by gas that should come from the countries that are creating the siege. So what we propose instead is that, we created a consortium of universities. It is the consortium of universities. We designed a project. We submitted to the Horizon 2020 panel. That is a European grant system, and actually the project was scored very high. It was it was over threshold and not funded, and we will send it again, but still, it's a good sign. And what we designed is a system, would be a system that is able, so we decided that if you have a population of a certain number of people, then this population will have an inflow of water and an outflow of water. Because if you consume a certain number of liters of water, then you will also produce a certain number of liters of water. Then you can imagine, okay, we all know that if you have a system that has water and salt, and if you put some water without salt and you mix them, you will have a flow of salt from the saline part to the non-saline part. Salt is charged, so if you put membranes between the saline part and the non-saline part, you can recover some energy. So you can design a system, you can design new materials, you can design to lower the energy that you need to desalinate, etc., and then you can design a system that is producing water and recycling all the waste that you have of the water production from the sea to produce energy. So you can lower the amount of energy that you need, and you can recover energy. I mean, I do not want to go in detail, but you can do something like this. And we set up a group of universities, a group of private sector, and we designed something like that. And this would be a system that would provide water for 20,000 people, and it would provide water for 20,000 people without the need of any energy that would, if not renewable energies. So you would create another island of independence. So this is creating an island of independence for water versus creating the dependence, destroying the environment. So these are the two. And this research was recognized quite well. It was invited, so this proposition was invited. We were talking about it at the United Nations. They invited us to talk about what we did with the hospital and what we were suggesting for water. It was selected by USAID, not surprised, but we were selected by USAID with this kind of project. And they asked us to be part of the Middle East Water Security Initiative, so they asked us. And then, and it got judged very high in Horizon 2020 grant, so from the European Union. And then you can imagine infinite number of solutions. This is another solution. For example, you can use plants to recycle water, and you can design systems that would simply use bacteria and plants to purify the water, and instead of having complicated sewage treatment plants, you can design them in a more natural way that without having impact and requalifying the ground, for example. You can you can design small-scale systems in which for example, you can design small-scale systems that are able to gather water from the air by condensation. And this small-scale system, you can design them in such a way that you can actually create them with scrap material. And this is one thing that we did. So you can design them in such a way that you can either do them from an industrial point of view, but then you can scale it down to something more simple, and you can design it in such a way that you can create it with whatever you have, and then you can teach people to do it. You teach what is the science behind it, what is the principle behind it, and then once you taught what is the principle behind it, you give in the hand of people the possibility of creating their own source of sustainability and of teaching other people how to have a source of sustainability. And we had the prototype that was built. This thing here is 2 meters and 1.5 meters, and it's working, not fully working yet, but when it will be working, the estimate is that it would produce 30 liters of water per day. That is not so bad if you take something that is completely built out of scrap material. And then something to us, it's very important. It was one of the last steps of my first slide, the know-how transfer. Well, if you want to do all of this, it is essential that you know know-how transfer. And what is the target that you need to have? The target is the local population, but where do you start with the local population? From kids. So what you have to do is because if a kid is sensible to what you're saying, then it would also influence the adults. And then it would also change the way in which he will behave. So the idea was that we wanted to create programs that would involve it's a multi-scale approach. I mean, you start from the students at university, you talk as academic to academic, then the student of university becomes a trainer, he will talk to the students themselves, to the students at the lower schools, and then the students, by playing, will learn what science is, the effects, what you can do, what are the possible solutions, and you would actually have the feeling for what is going on. So what we did is that, together with Chiara, who is there, we had this program we had it in Gaza and in Bethlehem. We could not enter Gaza again for the same reasons as before. And then we did it in Bethlehem. So we created a course in which we had, first day in which we did science to scientist talk. Then we taught to the student, we had a whole day in which we took the students and we taught them how to do a transfer of a scientific message to different audiences. So if you want to talk to a kid, you need to be able to tell a kid what science is about in such a way that the kid would understand and enjoy. And then we thought some experiments that were experiments based on what we do, electricity, water, and then some were for fun, just to make them enjoy, but to show that there is an effect in real life. And then we had the trainers that we trained were working with the kids. And this is the result. So this is the kids. We had kids from schools in Bethlehem that came to the university. And these are the kind of experiments that were done. So the experiments were designed by Chiara and by another group, and they were designed in such a way that once the kid would learn, they would be able to reproduce it. So they were designed with material that you can find anywhere. So you can see you can make battery out of coke, for example, but this is something you can find anywhere. And then you learn what is the principle behind it. You learn that you can what is the meaning of electricity. You can teach all of this, and the kids will just enjoy it. And you can see here that they were the students. Actually, we were in a strange situation that was the effect. This is another effect of the war in Palestine. That since guys between 18 years old and 25, they get arrested, you end up with women emancipation, very strong women emancipation, because women are going to universities, they want to learn, they want to make the change. So we had this group of hyper enthusiastic women that were girls that were working with us, and they want to become teachers, and they want to make the change, and they want to understand how to have an impact and how to create an impact. So we were working with them, and you can see that these were the kind of some of the experiments that were made. Some were more complicated, and these were the more grown-up students, and it was really, really a success. It was such a success that we were asked by the university to create a stable scientific divulgation program, because the schools asked us to do that. So now we are following up the program, supporting this group of girls that we trained, and these girls will go in every school in Bethlehem, working together with the students, but they will work with experiments that will be tailored on the social level of the school, on the social background. So if you're working in a school in a refugee camp that does not have electricity, we will design together with them experiments that will teach the kids how, for example, to build a photovoltaic lamp, maybe to the older one, or how to build a gravity lamp, or what is the principle between this. Because it's not learning to do one thing, it's learning the principle. And then that creates the sensitivity to make a change. And then this was such a success that even the institutions started following us. And then we had the support of universities, and we had the support of the European Physical Society. That is the society that is administering all of the physics departments all over Europe. And they have an outreach program that was meant only to be in Europe, and they were so happy that they could open a section there that is not in Europe, and they started creating a bridge in the Mediterranean countries. And now the students in Bethlehem are linked to the students in Europe, and we created a network, so we broke the boundaries in this way, so culture can break the boundaries. And then we create an exchange program between them, and we will support this exchange program. Okay, this is the team. So just to summarize, this is what we could do as physicists, chemists, scientists, engineers. And this is what we could do because we have the urge as people that are part of a society to contribute to the society. And you can work, and what I'm saying is that you can address the problems, the migration problems in two ways. One way is obviously to defend, protect, assist people that are coming here. But the other way is as essential as this one, is to work in the original countries and to start creating programs or developing programs in the regional countries. Not only programs there, they do not have to be programs in which you just put a seed. You need to create a network between different countries, between Europe and countries you want to work with in such a way that you destroy the borders, because the borders are what are destroying the situation, the human situation nowadays. So this is, and yeah, this is what we've been trying to do, and thank you for.
Questions?
Can you talk about whether you plan to take the original plant that you helped build for the first hospital and expand it to others in the region? And if so, what are some of the challenges you face? And similarly, it seems like you designed two custom solutions. Were there like specific improvements over existing systems, or like why not, for example, maybe you could just follow the previous design? Like, is there something
With the
unique?
plant.
Yeah, to
The
either
plant,
water plant
okay,
or
the plant has there is a reason to that. When you build a photovoltaic plant, the photovoltaic system is an investment that you regain after a certain number of years. If you're in a war zone, in a zone where everything gets bombed every other year, the population does not have the feeling of the power of investing in something in which the money will be gained back in 10 years. So what happens usually in the region is that when people start building photovoltaic systems, they build very cheap photovoltaic system with very, very, very cheap panels that break down right away. So what happened is, again, UNDP, again, they opened a tender at a certain point. I think it was in 2013, between 2013 and 2014. And they wanted to reconvert 3 schools. There were 2 in Gaza and 1 in the West Bank. And they did not put the minimum quality, minimum requirement of quality on the material. So the tender was got by an offer. I mean, they made an offer. They got an offer from a company that took very, very, very cheap material, and the plant broke after a few months. Same happens with some standalone photovoltaic lamps that were put in Gaza. There were some local companies that put a few very cheap standalone photovoltaic lamps. They broke down right away. So if you do something like this, again, it's politics. What are you doing? You're giving the feeling that making an investment in the direction of photovoltaics is the worst investment you can make, because you would regain money after a few years, and it's unstable. It's not stable. So what we did, it was to make a plant that was more expensive than what it could have been, but it was made with all the securities possible. So the plant is done in such a way that even if one panel breaks, the plant will break. That if ultrasonic plane goes, it will not break. I mean, it's made in such a way that it's sturdy. It is sturdy because what you do has to be designed on the place in which you're working, taking into account what is the environment that you have. So this is why we did a completely different design than the other designs that there are. You were also asking for the water systems. The water systems, we designed them in different scale, because one is a design of a system for a group, a community. So if you want to design a system for a community, like 20,000 people, then to us it was important to involve local research associates, to develop the technology and the skills needed to do something so big. And then we designed systems for smaller and smaller and smaller scale community. So from the family to the building to the community. And the families, they can build themselves systems like the one in which to do water condensation. Water condensation is something you can do in many, many ways. Think of a bottle of beer. If you put the bottle of beer in the sun, you have the water that condenses on the bottle. You can do that with the Peltier cell, that are the cells that you have in this machine that they make hot water, cold water. If you put a Peltier cell, you just power a Peltier cell, and then you just make water flow on this Peltier cell, then you have water condensation. It's a very simple principle. It has been done on the small scale, you can scale it up. But the important thing is that if you are able to teach what is the principle, how can you extract water from the air to people, then people can come out even with other solutions. So to us it was important to go on different scale in such a way that you could also do a different scale of know-how transfer. One is the know-how transfer at the scientific level, at the academic level, research level, and the other one is the know-how transfer at the community level.
Can you talk about spreading these technologies maybe to neighboring hospitals?
Yeah, of course. I mean, after we did the first hospital, what happened? We are not so rich, okay? If I want to put a panel, I have to start organizing a dinner, organizing a party, and apply for grants. And what we did, we did that, we gathered the results, and we started advertising it heavily. And the effect was that there has been, since we did it, another hospital that started building a photovoltaic system. And what we tried to do, it was this, what I was saying, we made a case. Our aim was not, we will take care of covering all the hospitals. If they give us money, we will do it. And we can apply for grants for doing that. But our aim was, we create a case, we show that this case is sturdy. We are continuously monitoring the hospital and the outcomes and the results, and spreading the information on what is happening and the number of patients that are treated and things like that. Because you also have to take into account that if you open a hospital 17 hours a day instead of 4, you cover for the electricity, but the hospital has to cover for the doctors. So they have to pay the doctors, they have to pay the medicine. I mean, so it's not simply that you, so the growth of the number of patients does not only go with you providing energy, it also has to go with the administration of the hospital. But this is.
Okay, let's thank Barbara again. We are a bit short of time, so we do a short panel discussion with Barbara, Boroka, and Lila, with the topic, actually, what are the best strategies of educating refugees and the general public in order to facilitate their integration?
Go on 2 days.
No, it will be short. At 2:15 we should go for lunch. No, 1:15. Lila also works for MICAP, so she could probably start by introducing herself.
So my name is Lila Pronpai, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation. Well, I work with James, and he already told so many things about how to integrate migrants and refugees into the Hungarian community. But first of all, I would like to say on this topic that it's important to understand what integration is, literally what it means. So integration is to make something a whole, to form it to a whole thing. So it means that that thing must be fragmented somehow. So when we meet refugees and migrants in Hungary, we should understand that their life is fragmented, and we want to help them build a whole and healthy life. Okay, so I think in our organization this is the basis, and plus we work, and we have to work with dedication and motivation and submission to help these people in need. So on the other hand, what James also mentioned before, that it's very important to have a direct communication with this community. And MICAP Association is in a very fortunate position because of the president, Mr. James Peter, who comes from this migrant community himself, because by this we have a much more dynamic contact with the Hungarian migrant community than other NGOs probably in Hungary. And we often organize meetings with refugees and migrants who stay most of all in Budapest, and we ask them about their needs. We do some type of needs assessment from time to time in order to know what they really need and what they want us to provide to them. At the same time, we and based on these feedbacks, we realize that for them having a job is crucial. So but quite often they don't have the skills to have some jobs they would like to have. So that's why we decided to put emphasis on education and to provide them training courses which really help them to have workforce skills. And I think this is the most important goal and key of the organization to provide such kind of very important labor market or workforce skills for the migrants. And that's why many of our students after finishing certain courses come back to us and apply for additional courses because they already saw the positive effects of attending our courses, and they can somehow see a positive future, and they get inspired and they get motivated after having our courses. So I wanted to be quite short, and I will leave the floor to you.
Thank you. I will ask Boroka, what can a journalist do in this situation? I mean, how can a journalist help to educate the general public? Obviously, there is this huge anti-migrant feeling in the population, and obviously the press has quite a large responsibility in handling this.
First of all, you have to realize that you are not just a journalist. It means something quite different. To see your position, you are a part of the events, not somebody out of this situation. So you are the part of this process, and you have to handle the problems as the part of this drama. There is two issues to make possible to create an educational system, for example, in such an area where it is not possible, just like in Kurdistan or in a refugee camp. It's easy to talk about integration in Europe, but I don't want to integrate anybody in Kurdistan. I would like to help them to learn to write. Yeah? It's very important. To create a school, or if it is not allowed, or it was burned, as it was burned, a school in Diyarbakir, a Kurdish school, we have to find another platform. For example, to make possible lessons through the internet. We are English lessons on Facebook with these guys from media now. We are talking with, not with my bad English, but I have friends who are speaking better English. And the other problem is to inform my fellow citizens, all around us, what is this migrant crisis? We are talking about Muslims, other cultures, what kind of problems we are facing with. And I realized that we have to change the situation. We are not quarreling about Muslims. For example, last night we had a Kurdish event at my hometown, and there were a lot of people. I know that they are against migrants, and they are xenophobic and nationalist, and I don't know what kind of against of everything, but they liked the Kurdish food, and we were eating together and listening to beautiful music, and everybody was relaxed, and it's this changing the perspective. I guess it's very useful to have fun. The humor is a very important scale to reach people. And the most tragic problem is that the Hungarian area is without humor. It's my fault.
It's a weird type of humor, should I say. Barbara, what about networking? What do you think? How can actually networking help to educate people? Well, not migrants or not refugees in Europe, but the general public.
I think that first of all, I wanted to add a comment to what she said. What is our experience is that if you try to talk, let's say, if you want to talk about what is happening in Palestine, in Italy, you talk to the people that already know what the situation is. So actually, you have to find a way to break the boundaries. And what we found is that if you need to find a way to interest people on another topic, and then, like she did with Dylan. And then, for example, we organized concerts. We organized concerts in Teatro Argentina. It's one of the biggest theaters in Rome, with very famous artists. People came for the artist, and then, before the concert started, we explained the reason for which there was a charity event, explaining what is the situation around, and we gathered a lot of attention. So actually, you have to find something that I think is very important to all of us, is that we have to open a channel to communicate. Because if we keep talking about us and them, we're going to make a disaster. And this is part of the networking, I think. And to me, networking is essential in the sense that I do not believe in borders. I mean, look at us. How many of us have been living or live in our own country? You have been living in the UK. I've been living half of my life abroad. How many of us working in academia or something else are jumping from one country to the other? Do we really believe that there are borders? Do we really believe that there can be cultural borders that are created by the society around us, but what is a border? So same thing is what you can do with networking. I mean, if there is an issue, the water issue is the same issue if you have it in Ecuador, if you have it in Palestine, you can have different pollutants, you can have different materials, you can have different solutions that you can find locally, but the issue is the same. So why not putting two completely different groups working on the same topic and put them in contact and make them exchange information? So what we're doing, for example, is we want to create, the idea that we have is that whenever we're creating a research program somewhere and we develop an IP somewhere, the people that are developing that IP should come with us to another place. So we will support them with developing whatever is done with the intellectual property that they developed. But then they're linked to us to come in another place that has a similar culture, but maybe similar problem and different culture, working together with another population and working to find a way to solve the similar problem in different conditions. Because we're humans. We are humans facing a certain number of issues. We have different know-how that has been developed according to the different environment that we have around us. And then what we can do is simply, what we should do, is simply to merge our efforts, all of us, to find a way to support each other. And I think that we hold a strong responsibility in doing that. I think that we, academia, cultural work, we, humans, hold a strong responsibility towards doing a transfer of who we are into the society itself. Otherwise, we will be the one creating the borders. If we do not do that, we are the ones that are creating a wall around us, not to see.
If there is any comment from the audience, if not, we can actually continue discussion over the lunch. I would like to thank the panelists. I would like to wrap up with one thing I borrowed from Bill Gates actually. He said during some live event that every human life is equal. People tend to forget this. And if we have any resources at hand, these resources are limited. And we need to use these resources in areas where we can make the most impact. And the refugee crisis, the migrant crisis, is one of these areas where actually we can make a long-lasting impact, not only on refugees, but on the and the people or the society that accepts them as well. With this thought, I would like to thank all for your participation. I would like to thank the Gates Cambridge Alumni Association for supporting me, and the director of the European membership, Luis, who can't be here unfortunately because he fell ill yesterday, but he's watching the live stream. And let's talk about these issues over lunch. Thank you very much.